We Talk Fantasy is back. It's been a long summer, but now we're in the best part. You can smell it. You can taste it. I feel like the Rock up on the turnbuckle. That smell of sweat and football is just around the corner. Kyle Ray, Chet Davis here with you on We Talk Fantasy. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I'm Goz from my childhood bedroom right now. It smells like Axe body spray and cheap vodka like high school up here. We Talk Fantasy is back talking fantasy football with you. Thanks to our sponsors, Mohawk Honda. This summer selection is king if you're looking to trade in your vehicle. Freeman's Bridge Road, Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of the way to please you. Trade in your vehicle. Get what you want. Last 18 months, a lot of places don't have those vehicles because the world has changed. Mohawk Honda has that for you. Come in, say hello. Shout out to my guy Cam McKenna who helped me. Shout out to John and Service, the Harridan family, Greg Johnson, and more. Mohawk Honda. By the way, show up to Kyle's house if you want. He lives somewhere in Glenville. We'll go out his address, but just show up to Goz's house, Kyle's house, then say, where the hell is Chet? Why won't he move to get closer to Mohawk Honda? Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. And Johnstone Supply in Troy. We love our friends over at Johnstone Supply. We're going to tell you more about them a little later in the podcast. But first, Chet, Kyle, it's been a minute. Congratulations to both of you because, Chet, you're now an uncle. Kyle, you're an unofficial uncle for this baby. So I just want to give a shout out to both of you guys. The families are expanding over there.
I was going to say, I was like, when you said Kyle, I was like, did Kyle have a kid I wasn't aware of? No, it's been awesome. Yeah, just got to meet him for the first time this past weekend. It's cool. His name is Bowen, and we've already decided, I don't care what he thinks, he's going to be Bowie as a baby. But then when he straps it on for football, he's going to be Bo. And then post-playing career, he'll become, Bowen when he becomes a broadcaster on Godzilla Media.
I like it, man. And shout out to your brother, by the way. Don't know Squatch, even though he's a little bit more busy now with the baby, he's still doing his thing and helping out with all the art on Godzilla Media platforms and more.
Soon to be on Etsy as well, because he has more than just drawers. So yeah, he's going to be creating some cool things. He's really good with woodwork, so keep an eye out for Etsy. We'll let you know when that stuff drops. But super talented guy. I
feel like it's almost on cue with the We Talk Fantasy podcast, like minutes before we record. There's always breaking news. My banner doesn't even reflect that, so already give me a fine early in the season. Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers, we were going to put these stories together, but there's news involving Deshaun Watson. Chet, you came onto the screen first with the news, so I'm going to lead off with you. Take us kind of a little bit through what the Texans have done, and I'll let Kyle react first to the news of what's going on with the Texans and Deshaun Watson.
Well, the first part about it, when I was doing like my Deshaun Watson research, he's kind of just fallen off. Earlier in this offseason, we got updates every hour about people coming forward with complaints. And I feel like that's kind of all just gone on the back burner somehow. So that's what I was originally doing my research on, to be like, is Deshaun Watson going to jail? Is he getting suspended? What's the update on that? There isn't one really, but he did report to training camp because he wants to avoid the fine if he missed the mandatory training camp. But the news today is that the Texans are finally fielding offers for the franchise quarterback, and they want a king's ransom for Mr. Deshaun Watson, which we expected, right? This guy is one of the top 5 young quarterbacks in the NFL, but they want a lot, potentially 5 high draft picks, most likely 3 first-rounders, and starting players. Which I feel like it'd be one or the other. Either you want to bring in a bunch of starters to add to your team and maybe a couple picks. No, they want 5 picks and starters in exchange for Deshaun Watson. Will someone do it? I guess that's the $1 million question. Some teams might be willing to do it. But the part about it that drives me crazy is we don't even know if he's going to play. That's not even a definitive thing yet. Will Deshaun Watson be eligible to play? I don't think we have that answer yet.
Yeah, when I was looking at all the Deshaun Watson stuff, originally this year I probably wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole. But now as this news came out, because all offseason you heard the Texans were not trading him. It was right. Not a question. It's not happening. Now the line's starting to move a little bit to where the Texans are potentially looking to trade Watson because he's probably not doing anything at training camp besides, spreading some hate. But so – in terms of from a fantasy perspective, where do you gamble for with Watson? Obviously, you're not going to touch him anywhere, I would say, within the first 6 rounds. But especially in keeper leagues, do you throw him in the 7th, 8th round as a high flying keeper, you get, a little unlucky with some running backs and some wide receivers, and you're not feeling your team very well and building for the future. And then there's always that midseason trade. Does he end up going? Does Russell Wilson get hurt, and all of a sudden he's on the Seahawks to try to help support? Like there could be some wild things that happens with this, but now with this news, I'm probably willing to take a way late round flyer on Watson just to see what happens in the future. But the Texans are starting to move. They are willing to give up Watson, and that could shake up the NFL in this whole quarterback carousel that we got going on with all these top tier quarterbacks out there.
It's so difficult to figure out how the Texans are going to trade because Bill O'Brien's no longer there. The GM was not even a person. It was Bill O'Brien, but then it was like kind of a GM. And I bring that point up because the trades were so wild. Remember, like Kenny Stills got dealt and Laramie Tunsil and all these they were just unloading draft picks that made no sense. And now they've got nothing for the future. And from Kyle's point there about the fantasy side of Watson, if you are in 10 or 12 team leagues and you have the strategy, which has really been the norm over the past 5 years to wait on a quarterback in those drafts, you might get Watson at like the 9th or 10th best quarterback in a draft. But if that is the case, be prepared to draft a quarterback again quick. So it's almost like you need to handcuff yourself because you got to play the matches ups because of what you both just said. I don't know how often he's going to be on the field. So if it's not Watson, it better be the next best option sitting on my bench. Totally with you on that, Kyle. There, wait, stack that team. And if you go Watson and somebody else, you should be okay. Unlike my neighbors who decided to have their alarm go off there in the middle of the podcast. Let's go ahead, Chet. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, who do you guys think let's start. Who do you think should do it? Who do you think is a team that if they make that trade, like a win now team, 49ers?
Yep. Look at the
you probably have to give up Trey Lance right away.
I mean, I don't think you're going to start Trey Lance to right away.
Right.
What is his? I'm not gonna lie. I don't know his contract situation, but does he go to the Niners for a year, literally show Trey Lance what's up, and then he can go wherever he wants? Versus
the reason I say no to that is because what they give up to get Trey Lance. So you're essentially giving up like 7 first-round picks for Deshaun if you do it that way. So like I feel like if they'd gone after Deshaun the first time, maybe. That's
a good point.
But now it's just like you've already kind of put everything into Trey. What about the Dolphins?
Or Broncos, yeah. Dolphins, I don't know.
They have the capital, right? They have the extra picks still.
Yeah. But my only thing is I don't know. I still think Tua can develop. I mean, I've always liked Tua. He showed some flashes. Tua's year, I feel like is going to be a little bit like Josh Allen's. He's going to be the full-time starter. He's going to go through his bumps and bruises, but I don't think you can give up on him after a year and a half.
I don't think you're necessarily giving up. I mean, you're just upgrading, like it's going to cost a lot, but I think we can all agree that Deshaun Watson right now is much more proven. Yeah. You'd be much more confident in a win now scenario and for the next potential 10 years. So I get what you're saying. I'm much lower on Tua than I was. Like when he came out of college, I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's legit. I don't know how he can develop. Like you have to have the arm strength in the NFL. Like when you compare to Josh Allen, at least Josh Allen could throw over the moon, like he just needed to figure out how to gain some accuracy, which is usually really difficult. But like to develop arm speed, I don't know, man. Tua just it seems like he's all timing a lot of lobs, which is like that. You can get away with that when you're throwing to 5 first-round pick quarterbacks in college against, the SEC. But NFL, man, I don't know. He could turn it around. We've been surprised by quarterbacks before, but I would, if I was the Dolphins, I'd go for it because look what they're dealing with. Josh Allen ain't going anywhere. Like the Bills are going to be here for a while, and you have a pretty good team around, except for a question mark at quarterback. So if you can get Deshaun Watson and you have all those picks already, I'd go for it.
Also, too, and Kyle knows this as a Bills fan, he looks small, right? Like, doesn't he look like a tiny? I don't know what happened. Maybe he's just protected. Maybe they had bigger pads in college, which I always feel like is a real thing where guys actually look physically bigger because of the actual weight they have on them. He just doesn't look like a big person under center playing for the Dolphins. The 3 teams I would toss in that mix for Watson would be Denver, who we mentioned because of the things that they can move. I would put the Minnesota Vikings in that mix because the Vikings are always a team that feels like they're in playoff contention and they feel like they're one step away from actually taking it over the top. in being that team that can actually make it happen. Who did I miss? I had Minnesota and Denver for the first two where I thought about. Now I'm forgetting the third team. Classic.
I heard the Eagles were in the mix, but that might have just been like teams that actually are capable of a haul like that. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'm high on Jalen Hurts, and I feel like it's going to bite me in the butt this year. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a lot to give up. Again, when the uncertainty, like it's one thing if you're giving up for a guy that you know is going to could come in and be starter week one, nothing to worry about. But like, there's so much more complication to this story of like, what are you actually getting? Like, I don't think it's going to last past this year, but this year is definitely unknown with what you're going to get from Deshaun Watson in terms of eligibility. So is this the craziest like lead up from like a fantasy perspective to have an Aaron Rodgers and a Deshaun Watson where like those decisions of what's going to happen, the outcomes of those is going to completely change the landscape of the NFL and fantasy football.
Totally. Yeah. The third team I'm thinking about, by the way, is Washington, who's a division leader, a division champion, who's a playoff team who played with a third string quarterback. If Watson's under center, how different's Washington in that playoff game against Tampa? And the answer to that's yes, because everyone's playing the waiting game. And there's like this correlation now between fantasy football managers and teams. You want to wait to have your draft the latest as possible. You want to wait to do your rankings and figure out what teams these guys are actually playing for. And for these NFL teams, no disrespect to Deshaun Watson, some teams are waiting to see like, okay, if we can get Rodgers first, let's try that. And if we can't get Rodgers, then we'll go after Deshaun Watson. So yes to your question. And Kyle can answer your question first and then go to this if he wants. Is Rodgers in the same spot fantasy wise that we kind of have to like hold back and wonder where is he going? Or do you guys feel differently by Wednesday he's going to be a Packer and show up because of his weird last dance tweet he had with Devante Adams?
Yeah, I don't think Rodgers is playing this year. I think a lot alluded to he's done. Yeah, I think it's a similar situation where you have to pay attention to what's going on, but you can't right now. If you were to say who am I drafting first, Watson or Rodgers, it's Watson, and it's not even close, just because Rodgers still not anywhere to be found. So I think Rodgers is done. I was hearing some rumors that this week he's retiring because he's not going anywhere. But I think if you're Green Bay, you might want to try to trade and get something out of Rodgers just because he's not playing for you. I think it's been made pretty clear.
You're not buying into the workout pictures of him and the lineman there?
No.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was funny. Kyle and I might have been in the tweet group that we have for this show where I was like, what does that picture mean? Like, obviously it was Jordan Pippen, and I was like, was that their retirement? Was that the last time they played together? Does that mean they're running it back? Like, yeah, trying to dissect what the heck's going on in Green Bay. I don't know, man. I feel like you can't even mock draft right now. I feel like you just don't know. Like, yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is throwing to Devante Adams, wide receiver 1. If it's Jordan Love, like that's a plummet for that entire offense. Aaron Jones drops off the map. A.J. Dillon, like it's just so brutal right now where it's like you almost waste your time mock drafting at this point. And if you have an early draft, here's another example of don't be stupid and wait. Like you have to. I understand that there's a lot of people are in multiple drafts and you can't do it every day, trying to line up when you're doing your drafts. You have to wait until that last weekend because this is what it could come down to. Like we could be in training camp and we might not have a final answer on Deshaun Watson. We might not have a final answer on Aaron Rodgers. Like you got to wait because there's so much uncertainty that things can fluctuate.
We are approaching Favre territory here with Rodgers. And what I mean by that is he's holding up the franchise. Like Green Bay has to make a decision. Either he's the guy or he's not the guy. And it's easy for us to say that because okay, well, the answer is Rodgers. He's always the guy. Yeah, but is it Jordan Love? Is Devante Adams going to get moved because he's the same type of player he's not? We've talked about this cryptic tweet. How does that help the team or franchise in any way of look, I want to get traded. It's been noted throughout my career. I'm kind of sensitive to criticism. I was offered the highest contract ever per year in the history of the NFL, and I said no because that's how much I hate being here. What if he has a bad game? Matt LaFleur, if you look at his record, overall in the history of the NFL, he's had one of the great starts ever for a head coach. So now every time the Packers play poorly, do you think it's going to get blamed on Rodgers or it's going to be blamed on Matt LaFleur or management? The last dance is Michael Jordan and Pippen and championship, 6 of them. They're going for the 6th. Rodgers has 1. So, even to have that type of swag, like, look, not only am I saying no to the biggest contract ever, not only am I saying I'll retire and host Jeopardy and not play, now I'm going to compare myself to Michael Jordan on the way out. Like, if you're a Packer fan, you could be pissed off. If you're a fantasy football manager, you could be pissed off because it's like, I put him, like Kyle just said too, with Watson even lower, where it's like, I'm not touching him either. And Adams the same way. He's not wide receiver number 1 to me upcoming fantasy drafts.
Right. Here's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
If you had a win now team, like we talked about the Vikings or we talked about the Dolphins, teams that have like solid cores, who would you want this year? Like, who would be the guy that you're like, if I'm a win now team and I get to have Rodgers or Deshaun, and let's say they have a similar price tag, multiple first round picks, maybe a couple players. It probably won't be that way because I'm assuming Deshaun sounds like they're asking for much more than the Packers would probably take. But let's say it would cost you a very similar amount. You're going to lose a couple starters and a couple picks. Who would you rather have?
I'm a little biased because I'm a Buccaneer fan and just saw this happen, getting a veteran quarterback to lead you fast. I would say Rodgers because he's been to a few NFC title games and did not get back to the Super Bowl. So Rodgers is my answer because I saw what Brady can do for a team.
Hunter, I'm on with Rodgers as well.
I think I'm Watson. I don't know how much more Rodgers cares about his own legacy and winning, like the Jeopardy thing. And I think the guy seems super smart and like, I don't want to say creative, but like he has that itch to learn other things. Like football's not his life. Where I feel like for right now, Deshaun Watson in his 20s, football is his life. Like that guy wants to win. That guy, all he wants to do is play football. Where I think Rodgers is kind of just like, meh, I'm going to grow my hair out. I'm going to go get married, like surprise everybody. Like, I don't know. I think football is on the back burner for him right now at this point in his career.
Yeah, makes sense. Shailene Woodley, nice famous actress, is the fiance. Go do something, hang out with Pat McAfee and do some interviews with him. Just do something else.
I have to bring this up now that you brought up Woodley. This is a funny side story. It has nothing to do with fantasy football. But so one of our good friends, Kyle and I, her name's Miranda. She loves the Packers and is obsessed with Aaron Rodgers. So much so that she went to Chico State because that's the hometown of Aaron Rodgers. Like, she's in love with this guy. It's a little concerning. It's a little creepy. If they ever run into each other in public, like, I'm concerned for Aaron Rodgers. But so when the news came out with that, was it the ESPYs, whatever award ceremony that was? Yeah, where he made the comment, the recorded video about, I'm engaged. And then everyone freaked out. And we figured out it was this Woodley character. So I texted Miranda. I go, oh, man, Shailene Woodley, public enemy number 1, huh? And she goes, what do you mean? I hate her, but why do you hate her? And I'm like, did you not see the news? And she goes, no, she's my high school rival. She stole my high school boyfriend. What? So they're both from LA. So she knows Shailene Woodley from like a high school rival standpoint. And I'm like, oh, Miranda. He's engaged to Aaron Rodgers. And I just got a bunch of swear words and angry emojis. He had no idea. But it was this awkward, like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah. So that Shailene Woodley just keeps wrecking this girl's life.
If Miranda wants to fight Shailene Woodley on a Godzilla Media pay-per-view, we can make it happen.
Yeah, I won't pay for a Jake Paul fight. You give me that fight, and I'll watch that.
That's right. So we've talked about risk here. It's the word that most fantasy football managers never want to hear when you're talking about your lineups each week. It feels like a New York athlete may be the biggest risk of anybody, including maybe even these quarterbacks. We're talking about Saquon Barkley, injured in September, rips up his knee. Training camp, there have been reports that he's going to be limited, but on the PUP list. We may not see Saquon Barkley in training camp. It's our biggest New York story here in late July, early August involving fantasy football. Chet, I guess I'll start with you on this one. Saquon Barkley, for New York sports fans, is he the biggest risk when we're drafting, especially in that first round for fantasy football drafts this summer?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, I know. Those legs, Kyle's holding up the picture.
Say quads and calves.
I'm going to say yes, just because of where he's likely going to go. Like, you are going to have to take him in your top 5. And if he's not the Saquon that we remember from a couple years ago, then you're going to be in trouble. especially early on in the season. Like if we don't know exactly what his workload's going to be, then if they slowly reintroduce him and he doesn't get the normal amount of touches that we're accustomed to, your team's going to struggle because that's going to be your RB1 and your whole team's going to be, around that player. So yeah, I think so. Do I think he's going to have a big bounce back year? I do. I think he's a freak. I think he one of the most motivated players after what happened to him. But it's going to be that risk. It's high risk, high reward. If he is what he was, your team's going to be great. If it's a slow, involvement early on, you might have a tough time.
Yeah, I definitely with you on that. The only thing that you're going to need to keep an eye on, and I think it's cut and dry, is you need to get his handcuff, who
is his handcuff? Because they got rid of Gallman, who's now on the 49ers. Deion Lewis is selling real estate in Albany. Who did they draft?
Must be. But you're going to have to reach for that handcuff, I think, in order to stay safe. And you honestly might be looking at a 6th round handcuff, depending on what news looks like. But yeah, Barkley, I'm very nervous for Barkley because one of my biggest fears is knee injuries. And then especially with him and how much he uses his legs because of how strong he is. It's definitely a massive risk.
So I just looked it up. They actually looks like they went out and they got Devante Booker out of Denver. So Devante Booker's the backup, who's had some big games. Usually he was splitting time with either Phillip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon. But then the other two, Corey Clement, is that the former Eagle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so they have Corey Clement, and then they have a guy named Gary Brightwell. I'm assuming that's going to be the rookie. Yeah, 6th round pick out of Arizona. So a little bit of potential there, but yeah. And that's one of those things. Like there are some teams where the handcuff can come in. We're looking at a team like the Vikings, where they just have such a strong run-heavy team that, Dalvin Cook's great, but they can put anybody in there. They're going to be productive. I don't know if the Giants are that team. You know what I mean?
In no particular order, I would look at 5 running backs before Barkley.
Ooh.
Kamara, McCaffrey, Henry. Kyle won't like this one. Zeke.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would look at all those guys before them, and Dalvin Cook.
And Dalvin Cook
was the other one.
Yeah, I'll give you 4. I would take Saquon over Zeke personally, but I wouldn't be stunned if Zeke had a better year.
The other part of this too for the Giants offense is that top to bottom, not top heavy, they don't have an all-pro wide receiver, but the wide receiving core significantly has gotten a lot better on the outside, especially the addition of Kenny Golladay this offseason. They have some targets now. And the other thing with Saquon Barkley being that risk in that round, and this is, again, personal to me, and I don't know how you guys feel about this. When you have a player the season before that gets injured on your own roster, you don't want to draft him the next season. What was it? President George W. Bush that once said, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again," I think is what President Bush said. Yeah. I'm you guys know this doing the podcast with me. I hold unreasonable grudges towards fantasy players. So because of him being on my teams last year and getting hurt, I don't want to do whatever President Bush was trying to say and have that happen to my roster again the following season.
100%. Because if you did get him last year, you probably got him in the top 2 picks and it ruined your whole season. So I was one of those guys as well. And this is now 2 years in a row that he's been injured, right? I know. Yeah. 2 years ago wasn't as significant as a torn knee, but I mean, we haven't seen a healthy Saquon Barkley since his rookie year.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kyle. Yeah.
I was actually, now as you're kind of talking through all the wide receivers, I'm kind of going back to last question. Danny Dimes, a couple first-round picks, and somebody else for Deshaun Watson going to the Giants would be terrifying because I am very big on Kenny Golladay. I've always been a Shepherd guy. Then you got Barkley. Their offensive line is starting to develop pretty well. That defense is very good. That would be an interesting spot for Watson to land. Daniel
Jones, Saquon, and 2 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson.
Done.
Yep.
I say done too.
Done. Yep.
Saquon's contract's a question.
Not that we don't circle back and spend a lot more time on Watson, but when you guys were talking about potential teams, if you're the GM of Houston, you're trying to do a trade with an NFC team, right?
Yes.
You just don't want Watson to kill you in the wild card round or the divisional round and every time get reminded of oops. If you meet Deshaun Watson in the Super Bowl, congrats, you're in the Super Bowl. Your fan base is happy. Yeah, so I think if I was a GM, there's no way I'm trading him to AFC, so I have to worry about him every playoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're kind of talking about this mid-first round, too, with some of those running backs we just mentioned and how those quarterbacks are going to lay out for your teams. If you've got your draft, which, by the way, for the picks coming up in the mailbag, thanks to Johnstone Supply and Troy, we're going to tell you how you actually figure out your draft order, what's the most creative way to do it. If you're picking between 4 and 7, there's going to be this break between that running back waterfall ending and your first skill guy, wide receiver, tight end, or even if you want to be wild and draft a quarterback to go that high. Travis Kelce as a tight end is going to be in that mix somewhere. And you talk about most outstanding versus most valuable, that's a different discussion. But could Travis Kelce for the 2021 fantasy football season be the most valuable player in fantasy? And Kyle, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs tight end?
Huge fan of Kelce. And I honestly, when we were talking earlier, guys, I somehow, and shame on me for leaving out Derrick Henry, the 2-time rushing champ. So if you fall in that 5, 6, 7 spot, I'm probably taking Kelce number 1 off the board in my first round pick. I did a little looking. His last 8 games last year, he finished the lowest catch total he had was 7. He went 2 games of those without a touchdown. That's it. And then in his entire career, his rookie year was the only year he did not record a catch in a game. No, Kelce is going to just be, is productive and will produce. And did I mention that he's got the greatest quarterback in NFL currently with Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, I'm proud of you for saying that, Kyle.
Yep.
Wow.
Heart hurts.
This is maturity before our eyes.
The other thing that you got to give Kelce is he is unguardable at the tight end spot. He can move out to the slot, beat your best linebacker. He can move out wide and beat your best corners. So if it's a game deciding drive, guess who's going to be getting the ball a lot? It's Travis Kelce. If it's early in the game and the Chiefs are looking to just get up early, 50% of the time it's gonna go to Kelce. If I'm picking 5, 6, or 7, and the top running backs aren't off the board, Kelce will be, and he's there. Kelce's mine.
I think the other part about that, Goz and Kyle, is the distance between the other tight ends. That's what makes him so valuable. He puts up like wide receiver 1 numbers as a tight end, but there are only like 2 other guys that are even like in the same stratosphere, and that's like Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, Kittle when healthy. Like those are the only 4 that are even near him, and he's still so much higher than those guys. So like, yeah, you can crush your opponent at the tight end every single week. We're talking like 15 to 20 points better than your opponent. That's what makes him like a valuable and like legitimate first round talent.
Yeah.
Love Travis. Go ahead, Kyle. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we had this exact same conversation last year. When is that swing going to happen where tight ends start going in the first round? And to your point, Chet, Kittle and Waller are awesome. They are the clear top 3 wide receiver 1s, but Kittle is just has always been separated. I think we've always talked about like when like Kittle's going to be up there, he's going to get Kelce, but Kelce at 31 years old just continues to get better and better and better. So, like you said, he in my opinion, if you're literally stuck between wide receiver 1 off the board and tight end number 1 off the board, you might have to go with Kelce as tight end number 1 off the board because you can get another wide receiver 1 who might put up 5 less points. Kelce's going to give you plus 10 at the tight end every week.
Right.
Yep. And even to add to Kyle's point right there, if it's between wide receiver 1, tight end 1, and running back 5, you might hope on the wraparound pick in the second round you get running back 7 or running back 8. You could be in an okay spot with that if wide receivers start to come off the board. I love Travis Kelce this year. Love him. Like he is my want on every single league because of a lot of stuff you just said there. And Chet's point real quick about the separation between 1 and 4. That's a big separation. How about between 7 and 10? People are going to love Kyle Pitts, but you're going to have lineups that are going to have the 10th, 11th, 12th, where teams are going to have to stream tight ends like they do kickers and defenses. Don't do it. The numbers match a wide receiver. I adore Travis Kelce in fantasy football leagues this year.
Goz has a little crush. Aw.
That's right. I want to be on that dating show he was on.
Kyle brings up the point. I think it was Kyle that just said this. If you're deciding between the wide receiver 1 and the tight end 1, who is wide receiver 1? Like, we have no doubt that it is Kelce at tight end. Kyle's thinking maybe Stephon Diggs, but if Devante Adams has Aaron Rodgers, Michael Thomas has fallen off the face of the earth. Like, who is wide receiver 1?
I think when I think about wide receiver number 1, I'm trying not to be biased on this, but this year I really do think it's going to be Stephon Diggs because the Bills showed how much they're going to throw the ball. But then on the flip side, I'm going to go back to literally the exact same point that I had last time. The Chiefs also have one damn good wide receiver in Tyreek Hill with the best quarterback in the NFL. So, but in Kansas City, you have a lot more competition. But now if you look at the Bills, Stephon Diggs now has Emmanuel Sanders. Gabe Davis has showed as a really nice piece. And let's not even start to talk about Cole Beasley because I've had enough of him. I'm still hoping that Zach Ertz is going to be a Bill. So when that happens, it's going to weigh out. But I think you're looking at, honestly, between Tyreek, Stephon Diggs, and keep an eye out. I'm gonna do one of my bold. It's not really a bold pick, but AJ Brown could be up there. No more Corey Davis. That dude could be in line for targets up in the 15s to 20s by Tannehill.
They do have Julio, but yes.
Oh my God, what am I thinking? Oh yeah, I forgot.
I do hope that AJ has a big season. But you just bring up the point though. There's debates to be had about which wide receiver. So instead of like driving yourself insane, go with the sure thing, and the sure thing is Travis Kelce.
Yep.
The Michael Thomas injury last season, like we did this podcast in 2020, be a slam dunk. Like we wouldn't bring it up. And he was so bad last year because of a lot of variations of things. And then now the question mark at the Saints quarterback position of whether it's going to be Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. And I know I'm in the fine minority of people who actually think it's going to be Taysom Hill because we literally went through this last season and they picked Hill. And it's like, now it's Winston. I don't know what he's going to do in camp. But to the question of who's the number 1 wide receiver, I believe it's Stephon Diggs because of what can happen with Tyreek Hill where Kelce can get some catches. He can get in the end zone. Yes, Hill can make some plays. But I feel like the most hated, sworn, social media ripped apart player who already is going into the drafts and is going to be during the season is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Because a lot of people thought he was going to have a monster season as a rookie and may have reached on him. Then he had an amazing week 1 where you thought, oh my God, he's the guy. And he stunk. And now he's plummeting in most leagues if you're drafting. But he's going to be that 1-yard touchdown vulture. Like, throw it to Hill. Mahomes, run it in. Kelce. Like, that's how it's going to be. I believe Diggs, because of that inconsistency with a lot of these names we've mentioned, is lining up to be wide receiver 1, which is a nice segue into, can Josh Allen catch Patrick Mahomes? With Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson with these question marks and maybe Edwards-Helaire stealing some touchdown carries, could Josh Allen be quarterback number 1 this year in fantasy? And Kyle, I can see your Bills helmet. I'm opening with you. I see like you're shaking your head. No love for the big man from Wyoming?
I think you and I said it a little bit before. Josh Allen's leap has been unreal. I think we can all say it's potentially one of the biggest jumps in NFL history from like a development perspective. There's going to come a point where the development stops and it is ride the wave and be consistent. Could he catch him? Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is in his own level. I think the gap, if we were talking about the tight end gap between 1 and 2 is here. The quarterback gap between, like, for example, I'm just putting Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, it's like here. There's still a leap, in my opinion. Patrick Mahomes has the running ability Josh Allen has. Both of them have arm strength. Both of them have shown actually, but I'm going to give the edge to Patrick Mahomes. But the stuff that Mahomes does with looking to his right and throwing a dart that way puts it on a little bit of a different level. But with the Bills' pass-heavy offense, I mean, we don't have a running back. I'm hoping that Breida ends up solidifying his role and stays healthy for the Bills. He might be able to keep up statistic-wise and put up the points. But, I mean, that Chiefs offense as well is extremely pass-heavy. So I think it's a little bit tighter. But if you have the option between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, 1, you're not wrong. And 2, you go Patrick Mahomes.
I can see it going either way. The reason I lean a little bit towards Josh Allen is I think he's still going to use his legs more. I think with how much Patrick Mahomes got hit in that Super Bowl and he's been banged up, I think the last 2 years, my years get blurred together, but wasn't it 2 years ago they had that hyperextended knee
Yeah.
And then last year, he's getting banged up. I think every time he leaves the pocket, they're going to be holding their breath in Kansas City, where Josh Allen is still, he's the size of a defensive end. He's Big Ben, but he's faster, So, like, I know you, Kyle, I'm sure at some point you're going to get nervous every time he does keep doing that because he goes crazy and hurdles people. But I don't know. I think there's more of a chance that you could see Josh Allen scoring in the red zone with his legs, which those 6 points, you do that every other week. I think there's a chance that he could be QB1 by the end of the year.
I think Josh Allen, what you just said, Chet, combination of two things with Diggs, with I feel still a little inconsistency at the running back position. Maybe the Bills should have done that, but when you say your goal is to beat Mahomes, you need to pressure him like the Buccaneers did in the Super Bowl, and you go heavy defense in the draft, that's fine. That's your goal, is to beat the Chiefs. That's the best way to beat the Chiefs. You got to piece it together. If you told me by the end of week 18, because now remember, there's an expansion this year, by the end of week 18, Josh Allen has more points than Patrick Mahomes, I can believe that statement.
Yeah.
Now, for most of us, we need it to be by week 14 or 13, because that's the difference between being a playoff team and not a playoff team. So I feel like those later games, because of maybe more of a focus on Allen taking off of the pocket, because of the lack of competition in the AFC West, there's a chance Mahomes may not see the field as much. And if Mahomes is banged up a little bit because of the expanded regular season, I wouldn't be shocked if Andy Reid said, take a seat on the bench. You know what? I know you're 75%, but we need you at 90. As LeBron James says, no one's ever 100% in their career after they take a minute in professional sports. As closest to 99% as possible. So because of that possibility, I see Allen being quarterback number one, at least when it's all said and done at the end.
No, it's going to be Lamar Jackson.
Ooh, I can't tell if you're joking or being serious, because I love Lamar. And he can get 1,000 yards again.
Yep, I think he is just – that guy's – he's crazy when it comes to not being satisfied. I could see Lamar having a bounce back. Is he going to figure out how to throw again? I don't know. But I could see it. I could see it. If you can get Lamar to fall in this draft, because I think we got so used to him putting up those insane numbers and being the quarterback 1 or 2 every week that when he was quarterback 5 or 6, everyone was like, he's garbage. It's like, dude, QB5 is pretty freaking solid, man. And he still has that potential. He's the most electric player in football. So I can see it.
He is the great white whale for me because of after what he did to our beloved Syracuse Orange Chat. I've always wanted to have him on a fantasy football team. I've never had him as my quarterback. I think
people reach for him. It's like, I'm not going to draft him in the first, but give me in the 3rd or 4th. We'll have a discussion.
Well, speaking about discussions and drafts and everything else, we are happy to announce Johnstone Supply in Troy will be a season-long sponsor for the mailbag here on We Talk Fantasy. If you're looking to have help in the Capital District, they've been helping you since 1945 for all of your HVAC needs, supporting local businesses and more. We're talking about heating, venting, air conditioning service, and more. Johnstone Supply in Troy. Give them a call today at 518-272-5922. 518-272-5922. By the way, if you're in that Troy area, let's say you enjoy barbecue, there's a nice little barbecue spot not too far away from them. So that's my plan for some people who are trying to change what they're doing in their homes right now and small businesses. Go over to that barbecue place that maybe has a prehistoric logo.
Yeah, I was there.
Looks like ours, right? Yeah. And then head on over to Johnstone and find out what they can do for your place all year long. Johnstone Supply in Troy will be helping us with our mailbag. And some of you are confused about actually sending mail to us. No, social media, email, and more questions about the fantasy football year at no, of course not. At @we_talk_fantasy at Tom Goz, TOMGOZZ on Twitter. Chet and Kyle, shout out your Twitters as well.
Yeah, at Chet Davis, CBS6.
For all your Michigan State and Bills needs, at RayRay8134.
Send your tweets, and again, email goz@godzillamedia.com. I say again because it's right in our ticker if you're watching on our visual side. Any questions you want, whether it's just matchups you're playing for your fantasy league, whether it's drafts, whether it's league structure, which we're going to talk a little bit more about because so many leagues are restructuring this year because of changes. We want to hear from you on these segments throughout the entire season. We start with this, and Kyle or Chet, either one of you can take the lead on this one because I'm fascinated by this. People right now are trying to determine their draft order. What's the coolest way, or how do you guys recommend determining your draft order each season?
It involves a lot of White Claw. But no, we do it random every year. And I do go back and forth on it sometimes where should it be based on as we lose Goz, hopefully he's going to be coming back. But it's like, should you be based on how the season finished last year? Should the winning team get the first pick or the last pick? Because I feel like there's different strategies always where people either prefer to be at the end or the top. I know a lot of people that hate having the first pick because you pick the first and then you don't pick again until, the 20, or it depends on the size of your league. So yeah, I prefer it to be random. We literally draw our names out of a hat, so it doesn't get more random than that. It brings a little bit of excitement, where it's like we do a reveal, we do a Facebook Live video, and because we're all, in different states and different areas. So yeah, I prefer it to be that way because it gives you, a different position every year. So I prefer that.
I have grown in love with the way we do it in the Dynasty League chat.
Just because you love White Claw.
The cheese.
You gotta get them as a sponsor on Godzilla Media. Come on, guys.
That's right. All right, I'll do my best.
But the only other way that I've ever done fantasy drafts was snake. So wherever you finished, if you were number 1 last year, you got the last pick. If you were last, you got the first. But the randomness just makes it better, in my opinion, because we're not talking about like franchising. We're talking about a fun thing that we do on the side. And if you're doing this at a complete random pace, it gives you a little bit more creative thinking of, okay, now I actually have to look at my mock draft differently. Whereas if you finish the season last, you can go, I have everybody available to me. No, I finished the season last and I still could be the last pick again. So I've grown to really like the randomness at the end every year.
Because it could reward people to tank, you know what I mean? You're like, I'm already in the running for that top pick next year. I'm going to bench all my players, stupid stuff like that. That's why you got to have penalties.
Yes, I had a guy walk up to me to a golf event, actually at the Hideaway, and said, "Yeah, my team is stacked, man, but I don't have any picks for 2024." I'm like, 2024? Dude, it's 2021. How long is your league that you've traded 3 years in advance? So, like, for Dynasty and Keeper leagues, I think there should be a limit of how far in the future you can actually trade your picks. But lottery's fine for non-playoff teams, I think, in those longer level leagues. For single season formats, non-Keeper league, I think you got to find an event for everybody to be a part of. I had one league I loved where we did preseason defenses. So, like, I'm a Buccaneer fan. They said, okay, you pick whatever team you want that's going to hold the teams to the least amount of points in the preseason. And whoever has the least amount of points gets to pick what spot they want. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah. I had
never heard that. That's awesome.
I had another one that does a golf tournament. Our guy Bryce on Sports with a Zena T podcast, they do a golf tournament where you have to pick one golfer. And whoever's golfer finishes the highest gets the pick. So things cool. Like that. Yeah, I like that idea where you can kind of have everybody invested in some type of outcome of some event for those longer, longer spaced out ways in which you can find out when your draft order is going to be closer to the summer. A
little bit more control, but it doesn't have to be tied to the previous season. So yeah. I like that.
And with that being said, it kind of leads to this one because a lot of leagues have always had the same format when it comes to a schedule. This year, for those who don't know, Week 14, which is tradition of the quarterfinal round for the playoffs, has bye weeks this year. So that means you can draft a player on your playoff team who is not playing. Guys, for those who didn't realize this till I just said it, is it time to reformat Week 14? Do you make with Week 15 your playoffs? Do you just avoid the Week 14 guys? Either one. Take the lead on this, how you handle Week 14 in 2021.
I think what a lot of fantasy football leagues are going to have to do is going to go after the college football playoff. 4 teams, weeks 15 and 16, potentially not, and not really risk it. But I don't know, that week 14 stuff, there's so many matchups that are decided in 14. Like
you could still do the regular though if you do 15, 16, 17. Because 17 is now going to be not the final week of the season.
Yeah, you're right. My bad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you just gotta slide. I think you just gotta slide it a week. Slide your playoffs. You can't we know which teams are going to be on bye, so you can plan your draft accordingly. And you're like, you know what? I don't want to touch a team that's going to be in the bye. But instead of doing that, I think you just have to. just slide it back 1 week. It's not going to be that drastic, of a change. Just make sure you go into your settings if you have a team or a league that you've re-upped and you don't really, don't think about it until it's too late. But yeah, I think that's a simple way to do it where, hey, they extended the season, so you extend your season.
Shout out to my commissioner in my long-term league, the 50-yard line. To follow them on Twitter. My guy John Burt had an idea. First of all, I think he's right where he thinks the NFL completely forgot about this part of it, where they're like, oh, crap, fantasy is a huge part of our audience. We can never do that again. We got to figure out bye weeks because this is going to impact a huge part of our audience that they're going to be. People aren't mad about it now, but they will be for those who didn't realize this when they hit September, October, November. Here's what we've decided to do. It's a 14-team league. So what's cool about having a 14-team league is that you have 13 weeks of the regular season. You play everybody once,
right?
Which is really cool. We have now called it the Challenge Week. So because we're adding 1 week to the regular season, week 2, because nobody's on bye weeks in week 2. Week 2, let's say you won the draft, okay? Or not won the draft. You won the league in 2020. Draft ends. You look across the board. You can call out any team you want to play in week 2. Then whoever finished runner-up, you get to call out anybody you want in week 2. So it's almost like the old Oklahoma drill where you kind of look and say, I want this guy inside the circle right now. You play everybody once, and just for the 2021 season, you call out an opponent to play in week 2 post-draft. I don't know if it's going to be the dumbest thing we've done or the coolest thing we've ever done, where you're sitting there with your buddies drafting your team, having drinks and pizza and food, and all of a sudden at the draft, someone says, I can't wait to play you week 2. I'm so confident I'm going to beat you. I'm going to play you twice. Then it has better than a rivalry week. I don't know. What do you guys think about Challenge Week for some leagues this year?
How do you set that? Can you go in and you can individually swap matchups? Wow,
so at least on the Yahoo format, what you can do on Yahoo is you can edit the schedule. So that's what the guys are going to do. They're going to have everybody play once, and then that second matchup, everybody will do the week 2 thing. Yeah.
Wow. Is that going to mess up though? Because so the schedule gets randomly put together, right? Initially. So if you swap.
Every week you're going to be – oh, no, you would just swap who you were going to play with the person that you're challenging. So you would just swap those teams essentially.
I feel like this is going to get more confusing than you think.
I think what would happen is this. You'd have the regular – you just make the regular schedule, right? Whatever it is.
But does he make the schedule or it's all randomly generated?
All randomly generated, except we do have a rivalry week for week 5. So everybody plays their rival in week 5. So everybody plays everybody once. And then – so let's say you make like a 13-team combination of whatever – or 14 teams, 13 weeks, you play everybody once. That's the combination.
Right.
Then you can add it wherever you want at the bottom. Say, okay, here's where everybody's playing everybody a second time. If you almost separate it to 2 schedules, that might make more sense if that makes sense out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like here's the formula. Here's part 2. Yeah.
Right.
Besides the math and, John Nash from A Beautiful Mind, like Homeland, having these darts and everything else straight across the board, it'll be fine.
You're talking to a couple Unitigo grads, so let's limit the math here.
Oh, don't worry. If you think that's bad, wait till you hear this next topic in the mailbag. Oh, no. COVID forfeits. Guys, the NFL has announced that if a team has a COVID outbreak, they will. Yeah.
Sorry. Something in my throat.
Make sure you have social distancing. That chat with your weird cough. That's right. COVID. I remember this doing a podcast last year about whether or not teams should be forfeiting games. I think Kyle took the stance. I think it was the Titans that said, no, it's you guys got to forfeit. It's on you. From a fantasy perspective, what can we do, if anything, about potential COVID forfeits this season?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer for that.
Draft the right guys. Stay away from Cole Beasley. That's it.
Yeah, Cole Beasley could ruin it for the Bills. You're just going to have to adjust. I know it was so weird last year when you'd have those, if you had a positive case come out on a Saturday, and then, I think we ended up coming up with the idea that if your team was in a COVID situation, you could pick a backup from your bench in case they didn't play on those Tuesdays or Wednesdays, whatever the crazy stuff we saw. You might have to do a little bit more of that, but at a certain extent, it's going to be unpredictable, and if your team gets screwed over, your team gets screwed over. Forfeits are going to screw over real NFL teams. They might screw over your fantasy team, and there's going to have to be a cutoff line of if you didn't make the adjustment and you rolled the dice, you rolled the dice, and if you lose, you lose.
Yeah, I thought we were done never having to worry about COVID with fantasy, but once the NFL released that, that sucks. But I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, if you have some of those forfeits, you should have backups and all that. So to those people that just put all their eggs in one basket with going with the entire Chiefs offense, you're probably going to lose if something like that happens. But that's where fantasy football needs to be strategic. You got to have bench players, you got to have backups, you got to play matchups. So if you're hearing rumors, you might want to look at the waiver wire. You might want to have to still have that additional IR spot for a situation like this, so you can grab another player for a week. But outside of that, I think this year it is what it is. If a team ends up getting forfeited, which I think is going to be really unlikely,
right?
But if it ends up having that, show your managing skills and show that you have some backups.
I'm with Kyle. I think it's all talk. Like, if they didn't forfeit a game last year, they're not doing it this year. They're just trying to put pressure on people. When you start threatening game checks from players, they start putting needles in their arms, like Emmanuel Sanders. So, yeah, I think that was just a strategic move on the NFL's part to put the pressure on teams on their players, because they can't actually require it, but they're doing everything up until that point, So, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's something you have to be prepared for if players get COVID or teams, what was it? Who was the team that their entire quarterback room?
The Broncos.
The Broncos. Yeah. So if that happens again, just be prepared for any scenario.
That term outbreak, right? You don't know what it really means. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 10? Is it 12? You just mentioned Denver. Not having quarterbacks sounds like an outbreak to me. The NFL can be very lenient, or however term you want to use there to describe what an outbreak is, to make sure every game is played. And to the point of fantasy, I think if you're in a league that has weird waiver wire restrictions, open it up for Monday night. Like, it's kind of cheap if all of a sudden you can't win your game or pick anybody up, and you got to pick up. Look, if you're going to go to the Monday night waiver wire to hope to win a game, you're probably getting a 6th option on a team anyways that's hoping they get a long return touchdown or something like that. So I had another question, but I think we might save this for our next edition of how we're going to piece together the We Talk Fantasy Football League this summer, of which one of us three is going to be the commissioner, who's going to be in it, what our rule format is. That might be for next week or our private Twitter message. So I close with this, Chet. I know you were the king of the trivia questions. I feel like I'm stealing your thunder here. Unless you had one, I had a trivia question this week.
Bring it on. I know you like to do trivias across the capital region. So let's see what you got.
All right. So for quarterbacks, we always talk about how important a quarterback can be in fantasy football, no matter what round you get it in. In the last 30 years, I'm looking for a number. And if you want to get bold enough and give us the name of the quarterback, that's even more impressive. Of the last 30 years, how many quarterbacks have led the NFL in passing touchdowns? And also that same year, I'm talking like, obviously the Super Bowl was played in January and February, so it crosses over, also won a Super Bowl. So from a fantasy football perspective, this quarterback led fantasy football in passing touchdowns, and that team later on won the Super Bowl. You can give me a number, and if you want to get bold enough, you can name off the quarterbacks of the last 30 years who have done it. 3 times it has happened. They are all 3 different quarterbacks.
Wait, wasn't that the question? How many times it's happened?
How many times has a player led the regular season in touchdown passes, and then within that same season also led that team? You guys both guessed 3?
You said it.
You just told us.
Yeah.
Did I just say it out loud?
That's amazing. When you said it, I was like, wait, isn't that the question?
Oh my God. I cannot believe
That's
I just. All right. So the answer is 3. Do you want to be? I'm leaving it, by the way. I'm not editing that out. Guess the quarterbacks then.
I love it. I think it was like when Kyle, when a teacher accidentally hands out the answer sheet, and Kyle's like, don't act suspicious.
They both flashed 3 at me. I'm like, how are they so good at this?
Oh man. Name the 3 quarterbacks who have done it. But then it's like a riddle. Like, you say the riddle, and then they're like, all right, we got it.
What if I feel like Joe Montana?
Just throwing it out there because he's won a lot of Super Bowls.
No to Joe Montana within the last 30 years. No to them. Although your guess is, I know where you went with that guess, and you're not too far off. That's a nice clue.
If not for Eli Manning, Tom Brady would be in the answer.
Is that a guess?
No, because I know they didn't win that year. Well, it could have been a different year, but the year that he broke the record is the year that they lost in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
That was his record-setting year with Moss, and they messed it up against Eli. 3 quarterbacks who led the NFL in touchdowns last year.
Aaron Rodgers with 48.
Peyton Manning when he was in Indy? Was that a huge year for him?
Peyton Manning is the correct answer for one of the three, but it was his first Super Bowl with the Colts.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. I just brought that up because the Denver one is very confusing because he led also with Denver, but they lost in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
All right. I'm thinking, yeah. Ooh, what about one of those Drew Brees? Is he leading the team and leading at fantasy in touchdowns?
Is that a guess?
I'll go Drew Brees.
Drew Brees is correct.
Yeah.
That season where they beat the Colts. You got Brees, you got Peyton. There's one more. I will tell you, this one is the hardest of the three. I'll give you a clue again. Kyle's guess is a big help. The original guess he got wrong is a big help to this one.
What was the original one?
Montana.
You said, Montana. Steve Young.
Ding, ding, ding. 1994 to 95, the flip around. Steve Young did it 3 times in a row in one of those years. He got the monkey off his back. A weird way to do the trivia question this week.
I like it.
I love it. I love
love
that
that
you do
one.
that, man. Let's keep that going. You make us look really smart.
Constantly stumble through it and make sure people get it. Usually when people are drinking alcohol at my trivia, they never even notice my mess ups for questions. But you guys are sober and ready to go. A lot of fun. We talk fantasy. Did I miss anything? We ready to wrap this one up and keep rolling through August, boys?
I'm ready for some mock drafts. I'm ready for some actual drafts. And I'm ready for some football, boys.
Woo!
Love it, dude. All right, I'm about to head back to the Capital Region. Make sure you follow all of us on social media. Head over to a visual side if you're listening on Apple or Spotify and vice versa. Do that. Leave us a nice rating. Comment below. You can use the mailbag on our comments on Apple as well. We'll read everything. Every mean comment you send to us, we'll read it and feel bad about it. And every select pick, we'll say, yay, we did it. We helped you out this fantasy football season. Until next time, we talk fantasy. Catch you guys next week.
Can I get a hi, yeah?
Hi, yeah.